Now, with Lionsgate already gearing up and preparing for their release of The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which, by the way, stars Peter Dinklage and Rachel Zegler this time around in this Hunger Games installment that's already getting below-average reviews by official critics, and it's not looking good in the least, as this movie is actually setting itself up as having the worst box office performance in franchise history. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. Now, we know that Rachel Zegler's career, if you even want to call it a career at this point, because every single movie that she has starred in has been nothing more than a box office failure and something that has not resonated well with the core audience, right? With the common moviegoers out there. You know, West Side Story was a flop, Shazam 2, Fury of the Gods was a flop, and this movie is setting itself up prematurely to already do horrible at the box office for several factors. Now, to top that, we have Snow White 2025, which actually is going to tally everything up to 4. Now, we know that there's a lot of things happening right now with the current situation with Rachel Zegler. She's been getting ditched by many different studios that have been banishing her and wanting nothing to do with her ever again or at all. And that has a lot to do with the Disney drama and everything that has been happening with Snow White 2025. But as of late, things are getting very messy, not just for Lionsgate, but also for Rachel Zegler behind the scenes and her overall attitude, so to speak, toward the critics. What they've been saying about the Hunger Games prequel that no longer stars Jennifer Lawrence. Let's get into all of this. Now, with Rachel Zegler already currently dealing with below-average reviews of the Hunger Games, on top of Snow White criticism, one major development has to do with Rachel Zegler losing her mind with the current box office projections for the Hunger Games and the below-average critic reviews. Now, one crucial update to this development is that Zegler and her team, which involves her agent and manager, are already preparing to gather Jennifer Lawrence and Peter Dinklage to stand by Rachel Zegler's side in an upcoming interview on film this time to address the issues with delivering this film to a wider audience. This upcoming interview is due to drop in the coming weeks after the film arrives tomorrow, as Rachel Zegler was one, of course, that came up with the idea to have both Lawrence and Dinklage discuss the current problem with the Hunger Games and its audience. Already, Rachel, behind the scenes, has been blaming the marketing team for the Hunger Games for not involving her in the spotlight of the TV spots as originally promised. And on top of that, she had hoped for, and is actually putting full blame on the marketing at Lionsgate for the box office projections of the film hitting an all-time low in franchise history. Zegler also recently went on an actual tirade with those at Lionsgate for also dialing back on their usage of Rachel Zegler's scenes and shots in the advertising. Not to mention, a lot of her scenes were indeed cut from this movie at last minute from a poor test screening that happened a couple of months ago, and is putting full blame on Lionsgate for why this movie is getting premature, lower engagement levels from the core Hunger Games fans and even newcomers alike that may be unfamiliar with the franchise. Now, Zegler is already preparing to make a bold and wild statement in the next couple of days about how she will be casting full blame on toxic males for taking Snow White too seriously, and how that is the cause for the Hunger Games' projected failed opening. Both Rachel, Peter, and Dinklage, of course, and Lawrence, I should say, are preparing to also acknowledge a statement that is about the drop that will blame Lionsgate for not properly marketing an actress that comes from different ethnic backgrounds to hold the lead in the film, and, of course, how they are already pointing the finger at the general public for being opposed to all of that. So, let me just pause here quick, guys. Now, we talked about this about a month ago, that Zegler was the one that came up with the idea to have Jennifer and Peter by her side to address the unfairness in Hollywood, the unfairness from all of these Hollywood studios, and pointing the finger at the current, situation of how a lot of people in the general public are having a lot of problems with the current state of the film industry and how they are really just going out of their way to create below average or subpar products, movies, television shows, whatever have you, and that's the real problem. Nobody's opposed to those with different ethnic backgrounds. Nobody is opposed to those that, have female leads in their shows and or movies. You just need a proper story. You just need a proper character development to actually make that work out naturally and to really have it grow organically. We know that this worked with Kill Bill. I know I always use this as an example, but we've seen other popular characters like Sarah Connor, Ellen Ripley, among hundreds of others. And yes, there are that many examples in film and television that were properly inserted, some of which may not be as popular, but Rachel Zegler, once again, losing her mind about why the below average reviews are beginning to ramp up with The Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and pointing the finger at the Snow White backlash and criticism as the cause, and the toxic male demographic. Now, we know that Brie Larson uses that as well for the Marvels. We know that Kathleen Kennedy points the finger at that as well. It's a non-existent group that doesn't even really exist. And we know that at the same exact time, people just want to see good content on screen. That's all what it really dwindles down to. Now, for those of you that have been wondering, we know that Zegler is one that does not take criticism well. Zegler is already in the process of having her agent and manager stirring up drama with the Lionsgate heads for cutting many of her scenes and sequences from the marketing that Zegler was initially promised. As it turns out, Lionsgate dialed back on their usage of Zegler in the TV spots due to the ongoing Disney drama with Snow White, and that is also why they dropped her from numerous roles that she was in conversations for with Lionsgate that was going to be announced by this January. The statements by Zegler, Lawrence, and Dinklage is also set to address the toxicity against the film industry, encouraging critics to write such negative reviews. That's how they think. Now, once again, the critics do not like Hunger Games right now just because of the story alone and how it's very lackluster. Alright, so this movie arrives tomorrow, technically today. It's beginning to arrive in theaters, and already critics are really putting this down as the worst Hunger Games movie of all time. And it's not just because of Rachel Zegler per se, it's also because of how poorly written and directed this movie really is, and how it really isn't working in conjunction with the other films that star Jennifer Lawrence. Now, we know that at the same exact time, Rachel Zegler is one that cannot take that as valid criticism, and she's putting full blame on the criticism of Snow White and all of the backlash that came along with it, pointing the finger at the male audience. Again, this is not a surprise because we have seen this happen with Brie Larson, we have seen this happen with Phoebe Waller-Bridge, with Indiana Jones 5. It's the same vicious cycle that does not seem to stop, and it's going to keep continuing as long as all of these Hollywood studios keep doubling down on this nonsense. So anyway, guys, drop a comment below, fill me in below in the comments what you all have to say about this, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.